You know, one of the most challenging situations for a bass angler, in my opinion, is fishing fluctuating water levels. You run into it a lot when you're fishing reservoirs, especially in the southeast, in this case, that are managed for power generation. You could go one day or 1 hour even on a great piece of cover or structure, and there could be bass all over it in 3 foot of water. You come back a couple hours later, there might be 6 inches on it. And you have to really understand how those bass move with the water and where they're gonna go. So today we've got fairly low water, which means bass aren't always gonna be right against the bank because the bass are gonna move with the water. When the water goes up, the bass are gonna move up towards the bank. And when the water comes down, they're gonna move outward. They're not gonna move far from the bank, but they're gonna relate to the next piece of cover from shoreline cover. What you're ideally gonna look for on a little steeper bank like this, you've got this tree and you know, the branches up towards the bank are in probably 6 inches of water right now. So I'm not gonna focus on that. I'll instead focus towards the end of trees. You know, this tree, I'll pitch right there because those bass can just slide out when this water's low. And I call that stationary cover, meaning it's always gonna be in a good depth range of water. So what you're gonna look for is a piece of cover that comes way far out, like a tree, like a fallen tree. It gives the bass several different options. They can sit up towards the bank on those limbs when the water's high, or they can just slide out when the water gets low, and they can often suspend right underneath these limbs right here on the end because, again, the boat's in 6 foot of water, so that's plenty of perceived security for a bass. See, and if you'll notice too, water's low right now. Look where all these shad are. There's a ball of shad twice the size of my boat, and they're out here right where I was discussing in about 6 or 7 feet of water. You know, normally they might run the banks in high water situations, but they're out here a little bit deeper. They're kind of following the contour break of the bank. Now, conversely, in high water, the bass are gonna be real tight to the bank. You know, and what you can do on pieces of cover like this, kind of stair step your way out. You know, if you're not sure, if you're not real familiar with the fishery that you're on, you can start tight to the bank and work your way out. So you'll make a couple pitches up towards the bank and then just slowly work your way out, just kind of like a grid, just kind of gridding it off like that. And when you get a bite, it's very, very, very important to pay attention to how deep you are. A great way to figure out kind of the optimal depth range that the bass are relating at is just making kind of long parallel sidearm casts or pitches down specific pieces of cover, you know, like this. So I'm pitching my bait in a couple inches of water and I'm bringing it down the tree, and it's falling off of a slope. It's falling off of that first break line, and we're here in about 7 foot of water. And again, you know, wherever you get those bites, it's important to understand that you can pattern that throughout the entire lake. Okay, so when you're dealing with any type of fluctuating water, remember the most important thing that you can pay attention to is gonna be depth zones. You know, cover and other things like that, they come into play, but if your first order of business is always to figure out the most optimal depth zone, and then you can just run around the entire lake all day and expect to get a lot of bites.